Hello, I'm Lisa Rao, and I've had the privilege and fun of working for this company for more than 20 years, and the honor of working with Jack and Pete Herschend, the co-founders of this great company and the men who built the foundation for Herschend Family Entertainment. They are living examples of servant leadership, Christian principles, and entrepreneurial spirit. We hope that by sharing their stories, you'll be able to gain some insight and some perspective into the heart of this company. You are so committed to this corporation. However, a lot of people would say, you know, when you guys retired, you could have just gone off and lived the lifestyle of the rich and the famous, so they say, but yet you didn't do that. And why?
Many of the people who are sitting and listening to this today will be moms and dads. And moms and dads, you raise a kid, but you invest in that kid too. You invest, not you, certainly financially, but you invest in who he is. And you will do everything you can to have that child be successful. Well, Jack and Pete looked at it that way. We invested in, and it was, we hammered nails and we painted buildings and we helped grow what was to become Silver Dollar City, grow it out of the ground. We grew that child. But when your child is 18 or 21, you don't say, well, bye-bye, child. You're off on your own now, and we don't have any interest in you anymore. And ask any grandparent watching this video if they have an interest in their kids, and the answer is yes. It is exactly the same thing. I wouldn't equate the corporation to a child, but I would equate the corporation, the whole operation that we do, to raising a family.
The vast majority of family businesses do just that. That when the Godfathers retire, they sell the business to a conglomerate, and then everybody gets hurt. I think the shareholders get hurt in the long term. They've lost the business that their family has built. The employees lose. Just look at the horrible mess of Six Flags, or what is Paramount Parks, or SeaWorld. All of those organizations that sold, the employees got hurt in the process. The communities in which they operate get hurt. So it was easy for us, as we recognize that we really love the Herschend Family Entertainment family, the individual people, to say, you know, it's too valuable. It does so much more good for everyone if we continue to be a family-held business.
What's your favorite part of your job now?
It's a joy to go to visit properties and see people doing things, doing the right things, and then to recognize that with a word or a note, or tell their boss what I saw. And I believe I know we build a stronger organization on recognizing and complimenting the things we do well than trying to fix the things we don't do well.
Has the growth of the corporation surprised you?
Back in about 1961 or 62, Jack and I had a meeting. We called it a board meeting. And the reason we called it a board meeting was we sat on a board bench out behind the Wilderness Church at Silver Dollar City. It was a nice sunny afternoon. And we made a decision then which really had long-term impact on the growth, how we have grown. But we said we wanted to operate a family-owned business forever that would operate just as much, I'm talking about from the corporate standpoint now, just as much like a publicly held corporation as we possibly could. And from that came a board of directors. Probably the best single business move that Jack and Pete made was to bring in an outside board of directors one group of men and women who would and did, in fact, on several occasions, literally outvote us. The objective has never been to be the biggest. The objective has always been to be the best.
All right, let's take it to here we are at one of the locations in one of the regions across the United States. When you walk in and you look around and you see what guests are experiencing, what do you hope they're feeling? What do you hope they're seeing?
When I visit one of our properties, I'm looking for smiles. We best serve people in two ways. One is when we bring families closer together, and secondly, that we create memories worth repeating. The best measure that I've ever found is how many smiles you see. If the guests are smiling, you're doing something right. If they're not smiling, you better hunt for what we ought to do differently.
In two words, welcome home. You know, they ought to feel like they have returned to something, even if it's their first visit here. They ought to feel like they have returned to something, whether it's here or on the Ducks or in Valdosta, Georgia. It doesn't make any difference. They ought to know that they're coming back to something that rises out of their own heritage.
You just began to reference mission, values, and the core of who and what we are. Can you tell me how all that came to be, the mission and the vision and the values of HFE?
Well, it's a story that I love to tell because it demonstrates the strength of the mission. About a year after the mission statement was committed to paper, I was in the employees' lounge, which I love because everybody, just street sweeper and president alike, all sit at the same tables. I love that, and you learn so much there. But it was 95 degrees probably, and a 60-ish parking attendant came in, sweat dripping off of his nose. And when he saw me, he came over and he said, "Jack, I want to tell you a story about what happened on the parking lot that is not a memory worth repeating." And I thought, it's working. You know? So if it weren't for the mission statement, you wouldn't identify, you wouldn't understand the problem, and therefore you wouldn't be able to solve it. So the success of a mission statement is partially about buy-in, but it's partially about a measure of how we want to perform our business. And so when it identifies things we're doing wrong, it's working.
Nothing is ever done overnight. What was important about that process was that our leader at the time, sitting here trying to remember his name, he said, "It's not good enough that you guys came up with." Here we were, the leaders of the company, CEO, all the senior officers of the company, that that's not where this mission is going to go. This mission has to be accepted as both doable and truthful by the guy who parks cars, by the guy who cleans the kitchen, by the entertainers on the street.
And now, decades later, do you still believe it?
Still, absolutely. It's the best mission statement I have ever found. I have a whole lecture I do on mission statements. I'm not going to do that here. But you stop and think about it, it is absolutely what we want to do. We are creating memories, and they better be worth repeating, or we won't succeed.
As I think about the example that we can set in being a company that believes in Christian values and ethics, I think that we will find that we'll model that. And the Undercover Boss is just a tremendous example of that. And the number of leaders that have come to me, I can only imagine the ones that come to Joel, saying, "Tell me about it. You know, you blew me away when I heard Joel talk about Christian values. and the CBS would leave that in and not cut it out. I think that my vision is that we will get better in our objective number 2, best place to work for great people and Christian values and ethics, being Christ-centered. That'll be what we will be best known for in the growth that we'll see in the next 10 years.
A little tougher question here. What keeps you up at night? What bothers you, wakes you up and you want to solve or fix?
I don't think I'll ever get over concern for us doing something wrong. And wrong physically isn't a bother to me, but when we have wronged someone, it breaks my heart. I think, Lisa, this is a part of our culture that has helped us really be successful. A company is no different than an individual. We make mistakes. We're human. We're a group of humans, but that doesn't keep us from making a mistake. And we best exemplify Christian values and ethics with what we do when we recognize we've made a mistake.
Fear of fire.
Yes.
Just simply because we've gone through it so many times. I worry about that. I worry about the security of those same men and women I was just talking about, when they know and we know that it's hard times, that the economy is difficult. How is that going to affect me? You know, our objective would be to have no effect whatsoever. But you know that people worry about that. And I worry about it. I therefore worry about it.
What are you most proud of in developing HFE and doing so right along with your brother?
I think there are 2 things, Lisa, that I'm most proud of. They both have to do with people. One is kind of a business-like answer. We are able to provide good employment on a year-round basis for hundreds and hundreds of men and women in an economy that before we started, I'm not saying we're the ones who did it, but we're certainly a major factor. Silver Dollar City is certainly a major factor in the economy of this region, just as Dollywood is in its region, and Stone Mountain and Valdosta, the list goes on. The leadership men and women who started out in this company as day in, day out workers, just like we did. I mean, they were doing one of everything. They were painting buildings and laying down railroad track and parking cars and you name it. But I've watched an entire set of men and women grow from just working here into some of the greatest leaders and leadership abilities, certainly in our industry. And I'd put them up against almost any technical requirements notwithstanding. I'd put them in terms of leadership qualities, understanding what it is to lead instead of just manage. I'd put that group of men and women up against any group you care to name. And I'm proud of them. I'm really proud of that.
You know, servant leadership itself is an education. If you had a behavior, a servant leadership behavior that you really want to see from HFE leaders, can you expound on that?
The most valuable trait that a leader can bring to the men and women for whom he is responsible is that attitude not of a boss, but of an enabler. My responsibility to you, if you report to me, my responsibility to you is to make you as successful as you possibly can be, to find those characteristics in you that will make you more than you thought you could be. Mayor Giuliani is full of good quotes, but he said one of the responsibilities of leadership is not to worry about what wasn't put in, but to enhance that which was put in and let it grow in you. And it's going to be different in you than it is in the next 10 people who you sit and talk to. That is, then you have a true, in my mind, a true servant leader, because he is serving you. Are we getting the objective done? Absolutely. Because if you're doing better than you ever thought you could do in this area, and it's my job to encourage you to even be better. Who wins? You win. The objective you are trying to get to wins, and I win because I'm part of that process of helping you be there.
As I think about servant leadership and what Joel brought to us when he brought us 1 Corinthians 13 with patience and kindness and humility and righteousness. It's the second to the last, kindness, and then honesty, and then commitment. The honesty part really hits me between the eyes. You mentioned that I was tough, and I think I was, but too frequently I would pull my punches rather than hurt somebody. I wouldn't tell them the truth. Now, the truth needs to be delivered in a kind way, but the weakness that I had that I wish I could go back would be to be consistently honest in a kind way.
You also are extremely respectful of time with family and time with church. Can you offer some advice about balance and spending time on your job as well as in your home life?
Yes, I can, and I may surprise you with this one. I think that the import of balance is so obvious that I'd like not to go there, because it is, everybody acknowledges it. Many of us as leaders do not do it well. We acknowledge it, we just don't do it well. And when I think about the fundamental reason why we don't do it well is a lack of trust. If a leader really learns how to trust his subordinates, his team, he'll have time to balance what he wants to do in his spiritual life, what he wants to do in his family life, how he wants to be a mate to his wife or husband. Time becomes the essential ingredient as you try to find that balance. But if you trust, people respond, they learn, grow, become leaders themselves. There's no downside to it. And that gives the leader then time to bring balance into his or her life.
Balancing in your personal life is not a penny whistle different than balancing in the corporate life. You have to find those anchor posts. We talked about it earlier, the triangle in the case of the company, and it can even have another point. Well, it can't have 10 points. You can't have 10 key objectives, really fundamental objectives. I think 3 is a really good number, because it will provide the ability to have some tension. The tension is healthy. The tension of, I'm going to decide to do this kind of effort for the Lord, but it's pulled by the tension over here. I have to make a living for my family. And by the tension over here, I want to be the best entertainer around, whatever they may be in the personal life.
You know, sometimes it's tough. You may have guests who yell at you. You may become cynical because of the day-to-day or tough economy or whatever. What advice could you give to HFE leaders about that cynicism that may slip in?
As you said, Jack, you're tough. I'm going to be tough. Get over it. You know, it comes with the job. Go back and be a more effective servant leader. Model what servant leadership's all about, and the cynical nature of people that you work with will melt away. It's a sure sign of who you're focused on. If you're cynical, you're focusing on yourself. If you are a servant leader, you're focusing on other people, and it's much healthier to be the second than the first.
Bring this down to day to day. So a guest yells at you. Over the years, I'm sure it's happened. How do you deal with that? How do you suggest to deal with it?
Well, I don't like it. I don't like to be yelled at, but the first thing that goes through my head is I'm going to learn something. If I really, really listen and listen hard to what's behind, what is it that guest is bringing to me that will help us? So they don't intend to bring us anything, but in fact they do. So if my mind is right about them bringing us a gift, then the pain of being yelled at diminishes a good bit. After listening really hard, the second thing is to acknowledge their pain. You're really hurting, aren't you? What could I do that would cause you to be in less pain than you are? And people tend to melt when they hear that. You know, they just are not used to having somebody be really interested in helping them, and they're in pain. You know, the madder they are, the more they're in pain. And so it's just another way to be a servant.
What was the best part of it all through the years and to present day? What's your best contribution, the thing that makes you happiest about what you've lived and loved?
I think the best thing that has happened to me, this is a business answer, okay, is that I have enjoyed 67 years now of partnership with my brother, my best friend and my partner.
We hope you enjoyed hearing the stories from Jack and Pete Herschend and the Herschend family. We hope you were able to gain some insight and some perspective into how this company became the great organization it is today. Thank you very much, and join us again soon.